I yield to the senator from New Jersey for a question.
Thank you, Senator Merkley, for taking time out tonight to shine a very bright light on a very dark problem. Actions by the Trump administration that put your rights and your freedoms at risk. You were talking about USAID and how the Trump administration was putting it through the wood chipper. That's something that resonated with me, as that was the place where I started my government service and my career, working at USAID, standing alongside public servants that were proud to be able to serve our country. So, because I wanted to ask you these questions, because I'm hearing it from a lot of people in New Jersey who are alarmed by the actions that they see, whether going after our government and our public servants, or what we're seeing in the streets across our country. And I thought it might be good to talk through some of these questions, to dig in deeper and give the people watching at home a sense of what we mean when we see and say that Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. Let's start with a simple but important question of who is the enemy? Or more importantly, who does Donald Trump see as an enemy? In multiple speeches, it's very clear that Donald Trump sees many of his fellow Americans, your friends, your neighbors, you, as the enemy. He calls them the enemy within. It's an absurd thing, it's an insane thing, it's something you might just write off as rhetoric, but it's not. Because it's not because of just something called NSP 7. NSP-M means National Security Presidential Memorandum, and this one is entitled, quote, Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence. In short, what this allows the president to do is basically declare that anyone or any group that opposes the president's agenda can be declared a domestic terrorist organization. It directs multiple government agencies, from the Department of Justice to Treasury to Homeland Security, to take broad, sweeping actions to disband and uproot basically any entity it decides they can label as opposing the president. Some of these entities are think tanks and advocacy groups. But that's just politics, that's civil discourse, and that's how it's supposed to communicate our differences. That these groups that are standing up, speaking out against the president's policies, that's what we in this country should be allowed to do in raising our free speech. So again, who are the enemies? To Donald Trump and this administration, they say it's you. So if you are the enemy, what about the entity that exists to confront and deter our enemies? The military. Which brings me to a second question. What is the military's role in confronting enemies? And let's start with the military role should be in protecting Americans. Now, I've had the opportunity to work alongside our military during my career in national security, whether that was out in Afghanistan or at the Pentagon or at the White House. These are some of the best of us as Americans. They've chosen not just to serve, but to put themselves in harm's way to protect our country and our way of life. But that's not what Donald Trump sees as the military. Look at the current deployment of the National Guard troops. What we see here in D.C. or in Chicago or in the senator's home state in Oregon, our National Guard, our service members, used as political props to produce TV content for President Trump. In all of these cases, the service members were deployed against perceived Democratic areas to clearly punish his political enemies. So if this is a president that is going to try to get away with everything, that leads us to a pretty scary question. What lengths will this president go to take actions against his declared enemies? The answer seems to be incredibly great lengths. We see that right now to our south in the Caribbean. And before I dig in here, let's pause for a moment and make one thing clear. Drug traffickers and gangs driven through the drug trade, enemies, these are entities and people that do harm to Americans. But the American people, not the enemies. And even when looking at how we address these threats from traffickers and gang members, there are laws that ensure that those efforts can't be turned against you. But that's exactly what we saw last month when a Black Hawk helicopter was used to transport and deploy federal agents in Chicago. According to a report by the New York Times, agents led by the U.S. Border Patrol pulled dozens of American citizens from their apartments in the middle of the night, pointing guns at sleepy men and women before zip tying them and taking them outside. I never thought that I would see these actions here at home. And it terrifies not just me, but so many people within my home state, and I know around this country. And if that's what Donald Trump wants, total power to target the government's greatest resources against his enemies, then that begs yet another question. What is the president's end goal? And I think that's pretty clear. His end goal is your silence, your fealty, your submission, making you so afraid to stand up or speak out. So, Mr. Merkley, thank you again for holding the floor tonight as a reminder that our democracy is under attack. It's a good reminder because democracy isn't just your voice and your vote, it's your right to stand up and not be silenced, your right to have your rights not threatened or intimidated by the same military that's supposed to protect you. So as I was thinking about the words that you were saying, but also this incredible act that you're taking tonight to be able to focus the American people's attention upon the challenges and threats that we face, I wanted to ask you a question, one that sums up the totality of what I was going through about just this meditation on the word enemy being used against our fellow Americans. So I ask you, Senator, what must we do to restore our democracy in this moment? What can we do to give power back to the people? How can I try to assure my constituents, the people in New Jersey, that our democracy is not slipping away?
I so much appreciate the question from my colleague from New Jersey.